They said, hey man, you want to take your long range thump thump and turn it into a close range womp womp 12 gauge? I said, hell yeah, who don't? Pardon that action figure therapy reference there. But that's my response to the Genesis Arms Gen 12. We've got updates on what the guns are looking like now, as well as a recap for those of you unfamiliar with this incredible invention. Coming up next on GBGuns. So, in short, Genesis Arms with their Gen 12 created a 12 gauge conversion for the AR-10. Incredible device. We've covered it quite in depth over the years. Got about half a dozen videos out there. Covered the 18-inch, covered the 10.5-inch non-NFA. Now we've got a 14.5-inch pistol in, and it includes some updates to their design. Now before I get into all of that, I want to nip something in the bud. I'm sure someone's already typing furiously, hey, but there's those cheap import guns that look like an AR and shoot 12 gauge. That's true. That is true. But they only look like an AR, and they're imported. The Genesis Arms is an American company based out of Idaho, and this setup pins onto your DPMS Gen 1 AR-10 lower. This lower happens to be a Genesis Arms lower, but it works on others, and we've demonstrated that in the past. Part of why I love their stuff is, look at this tight fitting. Man, that's snug. There we go. That is a receiver set. Anyways, this is an AR-10 lower. You can slap any round cut lower receiver onto the Gen 12, and after swapping mag and bolt catch, which by the way retain reverse compatibility, so your standard AR-10 stuff still works. Their magazines, of which they now have 10 rounders. A 5-rounder is included with their upper, along with the bolt and mag catch, but it converts straight over to 12 gauge. So if you think about, for logistics sake, for training sake, it's understandable why specialty law enforcement and military units are interested in this, because learn this, which is most of your gun, right? That's most of your handling, and now you can run 12 gauge without having to relearn or retrain things, keeping that same trigger. In fact, the Genesis Arms lower is now coming with a Hyperfire trigger, which this is going to be fun. Watch this. No travel. Just breaks. Good reset. That'll be fun to see how fast I can run that. When we visited Genesis Arms last spring to go over some of these changes that were coming, as well as just say hello to some friends, they had these 10-round magazines, which are now available on their website, and I was able to empty one of these in about 1.8 seconds. Yes, that is filmed and on video in our other Genesis Arms videos, because this thing is really controllable. It's another thing that makes me excited about it is you'd wonder, slapping it onto a buffer and spring meant for 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor or whatever you're running in your AR-10, how is it going to handle 12 gauge? And the answer is pretty darn well. One of the ways that happens is they engineered a system based on that. So the barrel, you can see here the bolt has unlocked a little bit. Spring pressure keeps it closed. The barrel actually cycles briefly, kind of like you see on a lot of big 50 BMGs, traveling with the bolt, and then after that stops, the momentum continues, it unlocks and cycles very smoothly. That's some precision fitment right there. So it's pretty smooth shooting, and we've shot 13 different loads through it so far. When we get this guy out to the range, we'll try to shoot some more variety. This, of course, being filmed in October of 2020. 12 gauge ammo is hard to find aside from really boring birdshot or really expensive slugs. Not much else really available, at least when I went ammo shopping for this thing. So, In those 13 loads that we've tested, it shot all the way down to your Walmart special Winchester White Box AA's. Number 8's moving under 1200 feet per second, still cycled. Pretty cool. Gives you all the versatility of 12 gauge on your AR-10 platform and handling. So what's new? Aside from the 10 rounders, which, I mean, burping out these 5 rounders is fun, but it leaves you wondering if you could have a little more. Now we've got 10 round magazines, so that's step 1. Step 2 is the introduction or the inclusion of the Van Comp system on the barrels. Now brace yourselves for some engineering wonder as I bust out the CAD machine and create this image for you. No, sorry, it's Microsoft Paint and I'm not that good at it. But what you're looking at it is the forcing cone. So the forcing cone is the part of the barrel that adopts or changes from the size of the shell to the size of the bore. Why does it happen? Well, because we've got this size or diameter for the hull itself, right? But inside that, at a smaller diameter, is our actual shot column riding in its cup. So you need a chamber bigger than the cup to fit the shell, but if you leave the tube that big, stuff starts to spread out already and you get all kinds of shock and compression to the shot and all kinds of things like that, and it malforms the shot. You end up with unpredictable patterns. So the forcing cone, which most shotguns have, unless you're Royal and such, building them at home, is where that change happens. And the way that the Van Comp system does it is a little bit different. So if that forcing cone is too deep or too sharp, then you end up with stuff trying to spread and getting shoved back down. Or if it's kept super tight from the get-go, you have increased recoil. The Van Comp Systems company was approached by a government agency asking for a way to increase downrange accuracy and reduce recoil. Understandably, as anyone can imagine, shooting a shotgun in a crowded area or shooting a shotgun when there's things you don't want to damage near the things you do want to damage, it's important. We typically take care of that with a choke. What the Van Comp system does is has greatly lengthened that forcing cone so that there's a nice gradual softer taper. That reduces felt recoil a little bit. It's said, we haven't shot it yet, by smoothing out where that pressure spike happens. But more importantly, it keeps your shot from getting smashed. There are other ways around that with stuff like the plated shot or using steel shot, things like that. But those all have their downfalls mostly in cost. The Van Comp system gives a nice gradual taper so the shot doesn't get too compressed, and that results in truer flying shot, which results in tighter groups. The rule of thumb is said to be 1 inch per yard of travel as far as shot dispersion on a typical cylinder bore. With Van Comp, they're saying less than half of that. They're expecting 10 to 12 inches of spread at 25 yards, whereas a traditional smooth bore cylinder bore would be theoretically 25 inches. So keeping things much tighter. Also the back bore, which effectively works as a choke, which is part of what produces that. So these Van Comp barrels are quite an upgrade. It's something that if you want to do on your own, you've got to send in your barrel. They only offer to work on certain barrels, and it's a service Van Comp does. It costs you a couple $100. It is now included and part of the Gen 12 system. So pretty excited about that. We're going to get this guy to the range soon. You guys have been begging for more 12 gauge. We'll have some conventional 12 gauges, of course, but this is really the ultimate, and we'll be running it. We'll see what we can do about checking those pattern sizes and things, and the quickness of it. But man, to be able to just slap a different upper on your AR-10 and go from your mid to longer range 308, 6.5, things like that, to something that is now a close in and as diverse as 12 gauge. That's one of the things I've always loved about 12 gauge. I'm not a hunter, but I love that there are dozens and dozens of different loads to meet your mission. So we'll run a few of those through there. If you want to see more about how this whole system works and go a little further in depth, please check out our other videos we have on Genesis Arms. Just wanted to give you this little heads up on how things have evolved with them and show you this nice 14.5 inch. They make these in 18, 14.5, and 10.5. This being 14.5 is of course a pistol because the NFA somehow defeats the Constitution. Don't know how, but we'll run this thing through its paces as well as these new 10 round magazines and have a report for you on that. Once again, if you're interested in this stuff, you can get just the upper that comes with a magazine and the hardware to swap on your lower, or you can get a complete firearm from Genesis Arms. I haven't found anything to not like about them. They are not cheap, but innovation never is, especially American-made innovation. So yeah, you can get your Chinese or Turkish stuff much cheaper and it will still fire 12 gauge. Will it do what this thing does? No. That's the Gen 12 update. We'll see you on the range. Thanks for watching.